Okay, so here we are, doing another episode of Does It Matter in my little office. So Craig, you've come back from Georgia, and we were just talking before this, and I was making the comment that you sounded a little bit partisan in some of your videos, and you said, well, that's okay because I am partisan. So I thought I'd get your feedback on how you feel about that. In doing these videos, I felt, well, I don't think you should sound partisan, or we should try and be objective. But you can also make the argument that, if you believe what you believe, you should believe it. So,
thanks, Max. So, yes, I absolutely am partisan. I am as liberal in many ways as anyone. And I believe strongly that the Republicans have done some very anti-democratic wrong things when it comes to American elections, and I also believe that they have a lot of bad policies when it comes to America in general. So that makes me partisan, and it makes me biased. It doesn't make me wrong either in what I believe about the Republicans, or inappropriate in how I interact with voters and how I interacted with the voting mechanism in Georgia. So that was a nonpartisan thing that I was doing, despite the fact that I myself do have deeply held core values that are at odds with many, many, many Republican ideals.
So yes, well, that's just the question to me. I mean, what are those ideals? So for me, part of me is like, I don't really care who is elected because I don't see what the difference would be. Like, what ideals would the Republicans do? What is going on here? Sorry.
So my feeling is I am biased. I am someone with ideas, and those ideas motivate me to act. And the question isn't, does that make my actions wrong? But you look at my actions and you say, okay, are the actions themselves biased? And when I was down in Georgia, I never asked anyone if they were Democrat or Republican. I didn't ask who are they voting for. I simply asked them outside the voting area, did you have trouble voting? Can I help you? And if they asked, I certainly said I was a Democrat, and I would go on and say, but we don't care. We just want to make sure you get to vote, and that when you vote, your vote is counted. So my actions were nonpartisan. Now, arguably, the more people vote, the more Democrats win. So there was a Democratic theme behind this to help the Democratic candidates, but it was not one that was specifically aimed at one type of voter. We wanted everyone, and we still want everyone who wishes to vote, who can vote, to vote. And we want those votes that are cast to be counted.
But why are there so many people that doubt the electoral system?
I think what has happened in the past is, gerrymandering started here in Massachusetts with Governor Jerry, Vice President Jerry eventually. And Democrats have not historically been people that don't rewrite jurisdictions to their own benefit. Republicans realized maybe 2 decades ago that the power of elections lies in the state houses. Those are the people that after the census redo the different districts. Republicans realized they do not have the majority vote for Congress, for president, for a variety of places. If everyone who wants to vote gets to vote, it goes Democratic. And there's an ideal that in the popular vote, Democrats need about 5% more overall for the nation to actually win in the Electoral College. And that means that the Republicans work things.
All right, sorry, Craig, we have to skip. This camera kept shutting itself off, so we have to switch now to my cell phone in director's view. So I'm sorry, I forgot where I cut you off.
Well, the many times you've cut me off. The idea basically, Max, is you're asking me why being partisan is okay when I'm trying and others like me are trying to ensure fair elections. And the challenge is, of course, if people aren't partisan, they're unlikely to care all that much. They may care hugely, but most people that were down there with me care that Democrats win. We were doing something that was impartial in its actions, but cumulatively, because when Democrats vote, When more people vote, more Democrats vote, and Democrats win. Cumulatively, it would have a positive effect for the Democratic Party. And if we didn't think it would help the Democratic Party, we probably would not have gone. So our interests were in fair and free elections, but it was also being driven by the idea that fair and free elections mean Democrats win. And of course, the Republicans understand that, which is why they're trying to keep people from voting across the nation.
Right. Okay.
And you might wonder why are they keeping, give me some examples of that. And some of them are just the ID requirements to vote. A lot of states tighten that up. Arguably, that's not a bad idea. I don't really have a problem with ID requirements. You need an ID to make a bank account, to get on a Greyhound bus. If you're someone that doesn't have a valid government ID, you're consigned to this sort of edge of the marketplace. And that's just a bad place to be. Getting a driver's license, a voter ID card, they make it reasonably easy to get these ID cards in Georgia, for example. So I don't think that's a problem. Removing people from the rolls, the Republicans really tried to do that. And that took a lot of effort to counter. The Democrats were good at countering it, which is why Georgia was so close and why other places Democrats won. What will Republicans do next? Again, I've never said Republicans are stupid. They're smart people and they have a goal in mind. Their goal is to keep people from voting, because when fewer people vote, Republicans tend to win. And what they will think of next to keep people off the polls is going to be interesting. It might just really be focused on absentee voting, the mail-in ballots.
Yep. Sorry to cut you, but
that's right.
To me, the big question is, did voters, so it said in the paper, in the Times or whatever, it said voters did not vote for election deniers. Like, many of them didn't get elected. But I think that the abortion issue was also huge. So which one was it? Like, do we know, like, did voters, was there not a red wave because voters didn't buy into the steal the election theory? Or was it because of abortion? Or is it because they're happy with the Biden administration? I mean, I don't follow this stuff at all. What's your take?
So my take, which is just having read a bunch of articles, but I talked to a lot of people over the past bunch of years. My take is that the forced birth discussion drove a lot of people into the blue column.
Right.
And the data to some extent bears it out. Women were voting, younger people were voting. Not necessarily in huge or record-breaking numbers, but they were showing up. The election deniers fell on the other side of the forced birth debate, right? So you deny an election, you also believe women should be forced to bear a child. So if you are against that idea, if you're against the idea of forcing women to birth, you're automatically against the people who are election deniers. So I think to say that the election deniers lost because they denied the election is missing the larger point. The fact that they denied the election is closely correlated with a bunch of other problems that they had with the electorate.
Great. Okay, well, I think we have enough stuff for today. Dear audience, Craig could go on for 17 hours, so...
Well, Max, democracy is bumpy, and I think we don't realize that. Here, especially in Cambridge, it doesn't really seem bumpy at all.
Right.
But when you get to other places, they're bigger places, they're more complicated, the politics is tighter. There's lots of ways it becomes bumpy. And for people that truly passionately care about these issues, and where the issues are very narrowly decided, the governorships, the Senate races, a lot of these things were decided by a handful of votes, cumulatively. So it matters hugely who gets that handful of votes. And it doesn't take much to swing the elections, which is why Republicans want to drive the numbers down.
Yeah, it's a future discussion I would love to have or hear your thoughts on it. I actually feel like I live in Russia here. Like, people in Cambridge have abdicated their political rights or interests. Like, they don't follow the government at all. As you know, like, I have a big question about the COVID recovery bonds. And there doesn't seem to be anybody here that questions anything. There's nobody that says, questions the government, say, well, why are you doing these bonds? Questions the government about allowing so much lab space to be built amongst kids going to college. Like, I see no pushback on anything. So anyway, that's for a future
arguably,
episode.
Max, that is what happens when you have a one-party state.
Right.
The other thing that happens, sort of when you have one-party states, is Republicans have gone into crazy land.
Right.
It's no longer a policy discussion. It's you've got Democrats who are not in crazy land, and you have Republicans who are in crazy land. And so you wind up not really having votes on policies other than like clear-cut things for people like forced birth. But you have folks looking at someone saying, you're on the crazy train, and you're on the wrong side of the forced birth discussion. And that crazy train, I think, helps accentuate the fact that Republicans are wrong on a lot of policy issues.
Okay. Well, so that's a question I want you to think about,
But not
for
talk
next
about.
time. No, I want you to talk about it, but I want you to talk about, are Republicans in Massachusetts on the crazy train? Is that the reason why we don't hear their voices, or in my feeling, they're not raising these issues? Well, anyway, let's talk about it next time. But thanks
good, Max.
for today, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.